Most of my carving, almost all of my carving, is left straight from the chisel. What that means is I'm not using anything else. I leave a facet or whatever with the chisel, with the cutting edge, and then I've finished. I'm not going to sand or rasp or anything. It's a very efficient way of working. It produces a nice vibrant surface, and there's a lot of variation within that you can use for different subjects and different elements in a carving. So I'm going to show you how I do that. I'm going to set up a series of demonstrations and show you various techniques that I use in different places to get these sort of finishes. Now what's important is that you need correctly sharp tools. You can't do this without the tools, and you'll see that the tools are in fact doing the work. So there's very much a sort of technical thing, and you need to practice. So let's start and look at something very simple. Here's a piece of wood. Now normally you'd be carving away and making lots of grooves like this, lots of surface texture. Now that's carried to put the light to the side here, so we can really see this in a lot of black and white, if you like. But the main thing that you need to understand is what you're actually seeing here is these ridges. This is what makes it look faceted, the ridges. So what you would normally do, of course, is you start taking these ridges off. So I'm using a slightly flatter tool here. Now, the principle is that if you keep taking these ridges off, eventually you can get down flatter and flatter, and eventually you'd end up with something really flat. So you can, there's a ridge, take off the next ridge, the next ridge, the next ridge, keep working. And so with any tool really, taking lighter and lighter cuts, you can take off ridges by ridges and end up with quite a flat surface. Now of course the tool that you really want to do this with is a flat gouge like this one. So by making this slicing cut and taking off ridges and then taking off more ridges, and you keep taking off the ridge and the ridge and the ridge with a very flat gouge, you end up with something that is pretty nearly flat. So you have a choice really between how much of this facet here that you leave and how much you can make flat. But that's the principle, removing ridges. And have a look at this. Here's the gouge I just used. Here's a file flattest gouge, and if you put these two together like so, you can see that they're very similar. This little part of this tool here, say the middle quarter, is very similar, if not the same as this quarter, this width here. So that's one of the reasons why you can use this tool with just a little bit of it to work a very flat surface. If you use all of it, of course you get the full sweep. If you use a little bit of it, so in some parts you can just use a little bit of it and go from a big sweep, a big cut, to just lightly merging something in, taking those ridges down every time. So let's just look at this rounded part of this carving here. I've been carving, and if I was using the tool in the normal way with the cannel up like this, then this shape works against that convex, that rounded shape. So any facets are going to actually be more obvious. So in this case, you'd want to turn the tool upside down and match the shape of the this rounded hill with the tool. So you could do this, and if you of course match it exactly, then you'll have a perfect profile for the tool to the surface of the wood. It will change the surface, so sometimes you need to switch to a slightly flatter gouge upside down. It can't be a quicker gouge, obviously it can't be something quicker because the corners will dig in, but a flatter gouge like this, and then do the merging of the facets like so. And sometimes you'll find that the that this hill is so slow, so flat, that even this tool won't do it without digging in corners. And then of course you can use a chisel, just a flat chisel, and again this principle of just merging those ridges together, and with that you can get a lovely rounded surface. So you use different profiles depending on the curve that you're doing. So what about hollows? There's some hollows here and in this leaf here. Well, of course you can use the same principle of matching the tool to the hollow. Generally speaking, I think that's always a good idea. But the problem is, when you're curving in here like this, one side of the groove is going to be with the grain, very much like a V-tool, of course, and the other side is against the grain. So you're going to have to do a certain amount of forwards and backwards, and that can be a problem, because there'll be bits of the carving that'll get in the way. So sometimes you'll need to get in with a bent tool or even a back bent gouge in here to just finish off these areas. So you can do as much as you can on this curve, say at the top here. Let me find a tool that can carve that there. As much as you can here. And then basically leave that little bit down here to clean up separately. The other thing to think about is a tool like this, which is a number 10, and this is a gouge that has it's a U-shaped gouge that has a sort of sweep at the bottom and flatter sides. So by tilting this to the side, you can cut the groove, and then tilting it to the side, you can merge that wall into the groove by using the flat part of it. The other things worth thinking about is that you can work over the whole surface like this with a flatter but narrow gouge. So although generally the principle is you want to use the widest tool possible for any job, you can certainly also go back over a carving and over areas and make a series of very small cuts, merging in all those surfaces. Rather tedious, but you can get through it quite quickly if you just focus on what you're doing. And remember this slicing all the time, so the tool is slicing like this. As it goes in, it crosses over like that. As I said, you do need to practice, but also look around this site and look at the way I'm finishing surfaces in different projects. Although you might look at the project and say, oh yes, that's about such and such. Look at the techniques that I'm using. Look at the way that I leave the surfaces from the chisel. Now it might be that you want a very smooth surface, perhaps for a bird's beak or an egg or something that really does need a very smooth surface. So that's what I'm going to look at in the next lesson, how to get a really smooth surface.